Hey people, welcome back to another mini episode of Man v Mob. And granted, I think some of these are actually getting a bit lengthy, so I don't know if I can truly call them mini episodes, but they are more mini than they used to be at the hour and a half, 2 hours. Maybe I went to 3 hours once, so mini relatively. This episode is about something that I'm fairly excited about, which I'm thinking about a lot, and it's called, what I call it is Brain Bay, and I will explain what that is. So, if you've listened to previous episodes, you know that I think that the state of the media and education is total crap. And the media is a racket where it's pretending to inform us, and it's leveraging the notion that we feel like we have to consume traditional media, newspapers, news programs to be responsible, informed citizens, when in reality it is leveraging conflict and our addiction to conflict and our addiction to rage and identity, and forming the notion that we're a hero and the other side is a villain, and basically dividing us and offering a really inferior uh, product. And it's designed to basically keep our eyeballs and to keep our dopamine dripping, keep us addicted. So that's the problem with the media. I could keep going. And then with education, once again, it's a racket. Higher education is selling people a credential, like the Catholic Church sold indulgences back in the, once again, I didn't check this date, but I think it was back in the 1600s, where it's selling access, or the idea of access to jobs, to knowledge at an inflated rate. And people are finding out once they actually get to the market that, just like the Catholic Church, the thing that the people got didn't actually give them, it didn't redeem them or give them access to heaven or whatever, although those people would never figure it out because they have to die to figure it out. People today are realizing that higher education, colleges and universities, the brick and mortar institutions, have ripped them off and sold them a worthless piece of paper that might imply that they are intelligent or knowledgeable in the thing that they were trained for, but they actually are finding that they have no market value. And it's partly the issue of having 18-year-olds choose fields that they're going to specialize in, and a rapidly, at this point, changing market that is increasingly not finding those skills that a lot of people have marketable. It's the effect of selling this as your access to the American dream. It's the effect of, I don't want to say collusion, because that implies like people getting together in a more conspiratorial way, but it's the cumulative effect of guidance counselors and parents and educational professionals and politicians, everybody, and then the decision of the 18-year-old on top of that. And 18-year-olds tend to not make the best decisions. So media and education, total chaos. I think what we're going to see, and I talked about this in a previous episode, a couple episodes ago, I think what we're going to see is COVID is going to cause an increase in student debt default. And that's going to accumulate rather quickly. And then you're going to start to see institutions, colleges and universities failing and folding and collapsing and getting into serious financial issues. The universities and colleges with the highest endowments are going to be able to weather the storm better. Obviously, the Harvards and the MITs, but a lot of the other institutions, even the ones that have recently built new buildings and dorms and labs and everything, are going to get hit hardcore. And in 2008, with the housing crisis, there was the bailout of the banks, and people were pissed, and they were saying, why are you taking our tax money and bailing out people who were reckless and who collapsed the economy? And this time, there's probably going to be calls for a bailout of these institutions. And people are going to say, no freaking way. I'm not going to, there's going to be revolt if there's an attempt to actually bail out this time. So um, the colleges and universities are going to basically be on their own. And I think what needs to happen, what I hope happens, is that Silicon Valley, which is, as you know, highly concentrated on the West Coast, needs to invest in these institutions. Maybe it's going to be getting some of this stuff at a fire sale price. I don't know. But if you look at Boston in particular, Boston is the hub of education, just like Los Angeles is the hub of entertainment, and San Francisco slash Palo Alto and Silicon Valley is the hub of computer and software, and Washington D.C. is the hub of politics and government, and New York is the hub of finance. Boston is the hub of education. So taking a hit like that, where I believe there are 48 or 49 universities in Boston, but most of them aren't Harvard or MIT and will collapse. So if Silicon Valley invested in the existing brick and mortar infrastructure of these institutions, they could basically get the scientific and technological laboratories and research in a fairly concentrated area on the East Coast and start to establish an East Coast counterweight to the power that is concentrated heavily in Silicon Valley. And not only that, not only can they use those researchers, those labs, those buildings, the equipment, but the rest of the university, which was so that's more of the sciences that I was just talking about, but the rest of the universities that was more dedicated to the arts um, and other subjects outside of the sciences. This is a fantastic opportunity for Silicon Valley and other institutions to invest in what were the buildings of classrooms and in, I don't know, concert venues and student group sessions and whatever, and turn those into basically um, I don't know if it would be a public trust per se, but it would be the location where the new education and the new media of the 21st century could take root in a much more networked manner. So I've talked about this before, where I don't think it's going to be traditional brick and mortar institutions and media for much longer. They're on their death throes, although they're never going to admit it, because they have a vested interest in maintaining the institution that they're a part of and their jobs. But what I see as coming about is a looser network of investigative journalists, of podcasters, of TED Talk speakers, of YouTube creators, of documentary filmmakers, and a host of other people. And they can basically use these locations and these forums, which will be integrated with technological forums as well, if it's mostly through Silicon Valley investment, and effectively have deep, meaningful conversations and a return to education for if possible marketable purpose, but also for education's sake in itself. And what I mean by that is, moving forward, education isn't going to be for teaching a job skill, or teaching a very convergent, narrow set of job related abilities. It's going to be much more for teaching a capacity for survival in the 21st century. And that's going to require critical thought. It's going to require collaboration. It's going to require adaptability. And if you engage in these conversations and these dialogues and have an intellectual curiosity, and if we invest in fostering that again, then people will, as I mentioned in the previous episode, people will start to pick up these heavy mental people will start to engage in mental exercises and picking up heavy concepts and heavy ideas over and over again, and they will start to build a mental resilience, and they will start to become mental Arnold Schwarzeneggers, where they will be much more strong, much more equipped to handling a a world that is deeply changing. And also they will be able to use the humanities side of what education was to effectively try to leverage these different technologies and different ideas to work for the bulk of humanity rather than just a select few. So this would be the ideal investment structure in the future of education and media, I believe. Now, wrapping back to my original point, this is a little hokey, but my idea for what this could be called was Brain Bay. So I was thinking that if you look at Silicon Valley, Silicon Valley makes sense because silicon wafers get turned into the components that go onto computer circuit boards and other electronics. And I suppose I haven't seen it exactly, but it's in a physical valley, I believe. And in Massachusetts, you have all this concentration of brain power in the Boston area. And if we consider that Massachusetts is the Bay State and we've got this giant bay, Brain Bay, I think that Massachusetts and Boston moving forward can be a hub of human and artificial intelligence. And not just for basically keeping, not just for leveraging that intelligence for purely one's own benefits, but also as, like I mentioned before, as a trust for humanity, where intelligence isn't just used as an ego booster or a feeling of superiority. I believe we need to marry intelligence with compassion and with a sense that we want to move as many people as possible forward into the future and really construct a new narrative for people to step into, because that's what we're going through right now. It was a period of narrative transition, a period of worldview change that is unlike what the people alive today have ever seen before, because it only happens um, in some form every 100, 200 years. So we're living through it, and we need to change the idea of education from being something that ends when you're, I don't know, 18 or 22, to something that is lifelong. You're never done being educated. You're never done learning. It's infinite. You're never smart enough. So eventually, we will be overtaken intelligence wise by artificial intelligence and by machines. But until that point, we need to keep getting smarter and keep paying attention and keep talking. And we need to do this also, as I mentioned in the previous episode, because the best of humanity will imprint on the AI and the machines and the technological systems that we create. And we will work alongside of them, and we will be modified and integrated with them and integrated with each other in all kinds of weird ways moving forward. And these are heavy, heavy ideas, but exciting at the same time. So consider what Brain Bay could be. Consider how one of the main reasons why Silicon Valley ended up being in California, aside from the beautiful vistas, was because Massachusetts didn't have the same competitive, or I should say, yeah, it didn't have the same competitive environment as California because Massachusetts enforced non-compete clauses. So in Silicon Valley, you can leave a company and go to another software or computer company pretty much immediately. You don't have to wait for a year or 2 years, or avoid the whole industry. You can just go from one to the other to the other. So that is ultimately one of the main reasons why, instead of being located next to the hub of knowledge and near MIT and near all of these very bright people, is because of the simple thing of non-compete. So maybe Massachusetts, if we push, will change their non-compete clause laws, but we'll see. So let all these things spin around in your head. Come up with some ideas and share them. Share them with me, share them with anybody who will listen. It's deep stuff. It's heavy stuff. I know it's not something you bring up at a party, but start to find places and make connections if you care about this type of stuff. Put yourself in group settings and in areas where you have a higher concentration of people who are interested in this sort of thing, and you'll realize that you're not weird. You're not actually alone. Although it's very rare to find people in everyday casual conversation who would engage in something like this, there are a lot of people who are interested in this and are devouring conversation about this sort of stuff. So look for it. Put yourself in those situations. Don't just wait for it to find you. It's like going out to the bar and expecting to find the perfect person through pure chance. We're in the era right now where we can find people who match better with us based on what we like and what our personalities are through specific seeking them out through technology, and use Meetup, use various other sources to find people who have similar intellectual interests to you. Do the same type of searching. That's all I got. See you next time.